Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Take Heart. Just the other week, I was reading an article in the news about what people are afraid of during the corona crisis. And it said some research had been done that came back with obviously a very long list of things that people are currently afraid of. But number one on the list was that we are afraid about the future. We're afraid about the future, and it does feel scary at the moment. It feels like with the lockdown and everything that's happened, we've jumped off a cliff and we're still waiting to hit the bottom, and we don't know what we're going to find when we get there. We don't know what's going to happen with jobs. We don't know what's going to happen with schooling even at the moment. That's up in the air. We don't know where we're going to be a year from now, and it is scary. And a question I've been asking is, how do we as Jesus' people face an uncertain future, not just with a lack of fear, but more positively with a real deep sense of peace? And what can help us in that? One of the things that I've often found helpful when things don't seem very clear is to come back to what I do know. So think about it like an old-fashioned magnifying glass, that you'd read like a really tiny newspaper or a stamp or something through. And if you go to the edge of the glass, it's all very blurry and it seems kind of fuzzy. But if you go right into the center of the glass, everything becomes crystal clear. We're looking into a future that is at the moment full of questions. Even the experts can't really tell us what is going to happen. And it's good to do models and it's good to try and predict. But as Jesus's followers, what we get to do is come back to that which is clear to us right now. And one of the things that is really made plain to us, made obvious to us by God, is what he is like. So in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, Paul writes this. I love this little line. The Son, he's talking of Jesus, the Son is the image of the invisible God. In other words, the God who we cannot see has made himself seeable. He's made himself knowable in the person and the face of Jesus Christ. If we want to know what God is like, it's no longer a guessing game when we're Christians. It's looking. Look at the face of Jesus and you see the character of God. In Jesus, we meet someone who is the spitting image of his dad. He is a chip off the old block. I can see what God is like just by looking at Jesus. And so when we think about what do we know, one of the things that we know is we know what God's character is like. That's why for the next few Take Hearts, not in this one, but for the next few, I just want to spend some time coming back to the Gospels and coming back to what they show us of Jesus and just reminding ourselves of maybe old truths that we've known for years, but just we've forgotten perhaps recently. Oh yeah, you're faithful. Oh yeah, you're forgiving. Oh yes, you're so gentle and you're so kind, and yet you're so powerful and you are sovereign. Wow, just to remind ourselves again of the fact that we know God and we know what he's like and we see him in the face of Jesus. But also what can be helpful is to remind ourselves of the fact that we've known this, many of us, for a long time. And it may be that you've become a Christian really recently. It may be that you're exploring faith and you happen to have somehow hooked into the Take Heart videos. But probably for many of us, we've been walking with him for a little while. And I imagine if that's the case, we will have had moments like significant, almost stepping stones in the adventure of relationship that it is to know God, that we can look back to. And that remind us, oh yeah, that was a time when God really made himself known to me. Like, I don't want to use the word showed off to me, but he showed himself at least to me. And that which is sometimes for us invisible just suddenly became really real for a little bit. What I find is when I remind myself of those stories in the past, it gives me confidence as I look into an uncertain future. So I would look back and I'd see things like relationships that God brought into my life at the right point, maybe opportunities that happen to just, be given to me in moments, maybe the fact that he moved certain people to forgive me or to, reach out to me or whatever it might be. But also, Beth and I have a little collection now of stories of God's provision for us over the years in different ways. And one of my favorites is from about 5 years ago. It's a little bit random, but it means a lot to us. About 5 years ago, we were having a heat wave in Watford, would you believe? And Beth just felt like the Lord just spoke to her one morning as she was changing Josiah, he's just been born, his nappy, and just said to her, ask me for what you need. And of all the things that we needed at that point, we needed a fan because the heat wave was affecting Josiah. He was getting heat rash and stuff like that. We needed a fan. And we talked about getting this really nice Dyson fan that was quite quiet, but would obviously keep him cool as a baby. Problem was, it was one of these super state-of-the-art Dyson fans that John Lewis sold, and we couldn't afford it because it was sold by John Lewis. But Beth just asked, well, we need a fan, Lord. That's what she said, we need a fan. Later the same day, she's walking down the street. She sees this guy walking towards her carrying one of these Dyson fans. And she just thought, this is too much of a coincidence. So she went up to him and she just said, "Excuse me, where are you going with that fan?" And he said, "Well, I'm just on my way to sell it." And she said, "Well, how much are you selling it for?" And he said, "Well, they retail for £225, but you can have it for 15." She was like, "Take me by," she grabbed him by the hand, took him to the nearest cash point, got 15 quid out and took it. And obviously the more we look back at that story, the more we're convinced that guy he just nicked the fan, it seems like, and just, sold it to the first person he could get rid of it. But my wife works on the basis that ask them no questions and they'll tell you no lies. And 5 years later, we still have that fan. We get it out every summer and we talk about that, and it reminds us. What it doesn't say to us is that God just gives us anything we ask for whenever we ask for it. I tried the next morning to ask him for a Ferrari. I said, "Lord, I really need one." 5 years later, I am still waiting for someone to steal a Ferrari and sell it to me for 15 quid. It hasn't happened. But it was almost God's way of, I imagine it to be like ruffling our hair, just putting his hand on my shoulder and just looking me in the eye and just saying, "Hey, do you remember? I love you. I really do. I love you. I care about you. The little things of your life, they matter to me." And that reminds me of the God that I know. Stories like that do that. And so what I'd encourage us to do as we ask this question, how do we face an uncertain future, is to come back to what it is we know about God. The story ultimately that we're told in the Gospels, but also the way that the invisible God has concretely shown us his goodness and his kindness and his generosity. Corrie ten Boom, who wrote the book The Hiding Place, which Mike and I have recommended. It is so worth your time if you have some time to read at the moment. But one of the things that Corrie says is this: never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. We do not know what is around the corner, but we do know who is in our corner.